Good afternoon or good morning. The goal of this lesson is to learn how to prove triangles congruent. And there is some special properties that will enable us to prove two triangles congruent by only comparing three specific parts of corresponding, or three specific pairs of corresponding parts. The first one we're going to look at is side, side, side. So notice how in the first example we have two triangles. They're being shared side of BC. And because that BC side is being shared, we know it's the reflexive property. Now, what you have to do in order to prove these triangles congruent is look to see if all sets of sides are congruent. So what I mean by that is if you look here and you have the two dash marks on AB, is it the same here? And since it is, we have a side that's congruent. So I'm going to put an S there to represent side. And then AC, we see has one dash mark, DC has one dash mark, so again, we have a side that's congruent. And I'm just going to focus on putting the S on the ABC triangle. And we said since BC is reflexive, it is also congruent, which is a side. So we can prove these triangles congruent by a side, side, side postulate. So all three sides are congruent. So remember when we name, we go ABC. So triangle, you have to start with the same angle. So those two are corresponding, so DBC would be the name of that triangle. Again, over here we have another reflexive side. GF has this circle on it, DE has this circle on it, therefore we have a congruent pair of sides. DF has this little caret, EG has the same thing, therefore we have another side. And reflexive means side again. So again, we have three sides, therefore we can prove it by a side, side, side postulate. When we are naming it, we go DEF, which we go along the side with that circle on it and then down the reflexive side. So D and G are corresponding, so we have to go along that side with the circle towards F and then up to E. Another way of proving triangles congruent is the side angle side. So now we have two sides that are congruent and the angle between them. So again, you check to see what you have. So here I have a side and a side. They both have the two dash marks, so I'm going to write S. And then again here and here, and so those are congruent, so I'm going to write S again, representing side. But notice how N and Q also have that same marking, so that's an angle that is congruent. So in order to prove triangles congruent, you only need three, and in this case you need a side, angle, and a side. Well, you have a side, an angle, and a side all in a row, therefore they are congruent. So NOP is congruent to QRS. One thing you can have, like here we have two carets. Okay, so those sides are congruent. You have the two dash marks, those sides are congruent. But in this case, we're looking for that angle, and you don't have one that's marked, but you see that you have vertical angles. The one thing you can draw in is vertical angles when you have them. You can't just randomly say, for example, O is congruent to R, okay, because those aren't vertical angles. You cannot assume anything is congruent unless it is marked besides vertical angles, because you know that is a rule, that's a postulate. So you have an angle here, so if we go in this triangle, we have side, angle, side. So that's how we prove it, by side, angle, side postulate. So TUV is congruent to triangle WXU. So T, we go in across that caret side, back out on the double line side, so here we go in with the caret side, out with the double line, WUX. Another postulate is angle, side, angle. Okay, so here again we have a reflexive side. Angles 1 and 2 are congruent, so that's an angle. Angles 3 and 4 are congruent. Notice this one has two dash marks. Okay, and then our side is congruent with itself, so notice how we have angle, side, angle. So here we have PQS is congruent to triangle RSQ. Here we are given two right angles. Those are congruent. We know all right angles are congruent. Here we have a side that has two dash marks. That's our side. And then again, we don't have angles marked, but we notice that we have two lines crossing. Therefore, we have congruent angles because of vertical. So we have angle, side, angle. What additional information is needed? We needed vertical angles to get that third angle. So EGF is congruent to HGJ. So for both side angle side and angle side angle, we need to have the middle angle or side, meaning for the first one, notice how we have the angle that's being surrounded by the two congruent sides. Okay, and then here we have the side that's being surrounded by the two congruent angles. So we need to have the middle piece. Another one is angle side. So this one again is probably the most complicated because they're not directly surrounding or on one side. Here we are given B and S are congruent, so that's an angle, and we're given that these two sides are congruent, and that's a side. So if you notice, we have vertical angles again. So how we figure out this is angle side is you always start at one point. Okay, so we haven't talked about one that said side, angle, angle. So we can't do that. Okay, we can only use the postulates that we know. So I'm going to start at the second one, angle, side. Okay, so you can't do this angle side and then this one because they have to be attached. Okay, so these two angles are attached by this side. We're not jumping around. So this is angle side. So angle BAE is congruent to triangle SAR. So we are proving this next triangle by angle side, but we need to figure out what piece of information is missing. So here we have an angle and here we have a side. So if we choose this angle here, then it would be angle, side, angle. So do you see how they're all connected? Angle, side, angle. We can't have that. So we're going to choose this other pair of angles to get angle, side. Okay, so we needed angle A to be congruent to angle K. The last one we're going to look at is hypotenuse leg. Hypotenuse leg is when you have a right triangle because that's the only time you can ever have a hypotenuse is when you have a right triangle. So if you have your hypotenuse, you look straight across from it, and if you have a right angle, you look straight across from it. If your hypotenuse is congruent, that's your H, and then one of the other sides has to be congruent as well, which is your L. So this is congruent by H, hypotenuse, L, leg. So ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And so here's our reflexive symbol. Here we have two sides being congruent. If we want to prove this by hypotenuse leg, what is needed? And again, we said in order to have hypotenuse leg, you better have that right angle. So we need right angles. So what we're going to do in these next examples is I'm giving you pictures, and I want you to tell me, is it congruent by side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, angle, side, or HL. And we do this by just identifying what we have. So in problem number 1, here we have a pair of parallel or congruent sides. Marked is a pair of congruent angles. Marked is a pair of congruent sides. So this is being proven by side, angle, side. Here we have right angles, and what we look for right angles is a hypotenuse leg. So across from that right angle is our hypotenuse. So we have our H, but do we have anything that's marked for our legs to have the L piece? Since we do not have enough information to prove. Now if you had something, let's say you were going through and you had angle, side, side, okay, and you said, oh, I don't have angle, side, side, or angle, angle. There are some combinations that do not work with this, and that's based on the side lengths, because if those can change, your angle measures could possibly be the same. But side lengths vary. So these are the only 5 ways of proving triangles congruent. So if you end up with something different, it does not work or not enough information. So here's two more. Here we have a reflexive side, so make sure you're always looking for vertical angles and reflexive sides. So you have a matching side, and another matching side. So this is congruent by side, side, side. Like I said, always look out for reflexive sides and vertical angles. So you have vertical angles, you have another side here, and then you have another angle, 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 side, is how you would prove that congruent.